Hello there, YouTube, and everywhere else this ends up going. I have already made a short on this topic, but I want to talk about it properly. Now, I did want to talk about this a few days ago, but I've only recently had surgery. It was only laser eye surgery, but it was quite intensive laser eye surgery. I had quite a bad retina detachment, almost went blind in one eye, so that was quite intense laser eye surgery. It was very painful, actually. A lot of people say laser eye surgery is painless. It's not painless. It depends on what kind you're having. Some types can be painless, but this was like a full retina reattachment. They had to burn away something at the back of the eye. I'm not entirely sure exactly what needed to be done. I'm no doctor. I should be wearing my glasses right now, but annoyingly, I've got a spot right there, which means that the glasses are painfully pressing against this spot. So I'm not wearing my glasses at the moment. So that's annoying. But yeah, I almost never get spots. I never got spots as a teenager. I almost never get spots any other time. Suddenly get a giant spot now. I reckon the glasses are causing it. But anyway, I want to talk about the Roald Dahl situation. Now, I grew up reading Roald Dahl. I actually tried to read Roald Dahl, I think it was the beginning of last year. And I started reading the twits, and I kind of gave up on it because I was rereading it, and I realised it's very childish prose. And it was something that I wasn't really feeling at the time. Now, I think the twits is especially childish because it's one of his younger books. So maybe that was the wrong one for me to go to. But I do still love Roald Dahl. I do still love his books. Maybe if I was reading them to a child, it would be less of an issue. Sitting alone reading them as an adult, they're difficult to read. They're not for me. But I grew up with them, and I still love them for the memories I had of them. And the recent censorship is frankly disgusting. If you've read any of the changes, you can see that they've not just gone in and changed a couple of words. This isn't just a case of finding a word that is simply not used anymore, or a word that's changed its meaning. Like, for example, the word gay. The word gay has a very specific meaning in today's society, but the word gay in older societies meant happy. I could definitely understand someone going back and saying, you know what, we're going to reprint a book, we're going to change the word gay to happy in various different printings, because it doesn't make sense to modern audiences, and a lot of people aren't understanding it. I could understand that change, for example. I could also understand, say, changing Huckleberry Finn. Going to Mark Twain's books and going, you know what, Huckleberry Finn, we're going to make one change, and that is the character Nigger Jim. That character is called Nigger Jim. That is his name, and that is how people refer to him. But let's face it, that is not a very nice way to call someone, and it's not something that's acceptable by today's standards. The book is entirely about a man who is in a situation where in that society he is a lesser person, and a child learning that actually we're not so different, and him being black doesn't make him lesser. It is all about deconstructing race. That's the point of the book. The fact that he's called Nigger Jim throughout the book actually works as a stark reminder that he's a second-class person all the way through. And yet, Huck doesn't see him like that. And that's a good thing. Am I mixing up Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer? I don't think I am. Right, it doesn't matter. Right, my point is, I could understand them going back and deciding to remove that word, because now it's seen as just a racial slur. It's not seen as anything else. I would say, even see removing the word Negro in certain books. Right, even though the word Negro is just a descriptive word, it's no different than Caucasian. It's a scientific term. But I could also see someone going, you know what, that word has too many racial connotations behind it. It's got too many bigotry connotations behind it. Let's change it. I could understand that. The difference is that we're not talking about going back and changing something that is a clear example of language that is simply not used the way it is anymore. This isn't that. This is just plain censorship. And even in those cases, I wouldn't necessarily do it. I like the fact that the word use is still maintained in my copy of Mark Twain's writing, because I think it lends something to it. I think it adds something to it. Right? I think that knowing that those words are still there makes a big difference. It highlights the issues he was bringing about. Mark Twain's books are all very much about egalitarianism. So the fact that he uses that word without any reluctance shows how frivolously that word was thrown around. My point is that Roald Dahl's works have been butchered. It wasn't just going in and changing one or two words. It was going in and rewriting his entire fucking prose. This was a woke assassination on his writing, changing everything. This was going in and removing any instances of what they would call body shaming. Anyone referred to as fat is removed. The Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are now gender neutral for no apparent reason. Any reference to women's jobs have been purposely changed up to be more feminist. They've been made more empowered. Right? They now have to be top scientists rather than secretaries. It's ridiculous. They've even gone so far as to do things like Matilda wasn't allowed to read the book she read at the library. She can't read Rudyard Kipling anymore because, the Jungle Book is so fucking destructive to children. So instead, she has to read Jane Austen because, we've got to make sure the little girl reads the correct books. It was ridiculous and it was offensive. Now, this level of censorship should never be done, because what this effectively means is that you end up with art being no longer preserved. Now I have this is only one half, the Folio Society collection of Roald Dahl books now. I ordered these very shortly after hearing about this because I want to make sure I have a good quality collection. Like, I don't have kids at the moment. I would like to have kids. If I have kids, I want to be able to read Roald Dahl books to them, because these were formative books for me as a kid. Hell, I may not have kids. My sister almost certainly will have kids. She's getting married this year. Right? When she does have kids, I'm going to read these books to her kids. Why? Because I like kids. I like kids. I like reading. I like reading to kids. I read to my sister when she was a kid. She's 8 years younger than me. So yeah. Why not? Why not have these books? And I'm going to read them the way they were. I'll also read Jungle Book to her kids, assuming that she doesn't read Jungle Book to her kids. Right? Hell, I've got nothing better to do. I'm a disabled man who has no job. Why shouldn't I read every damn book I've got here? I've got a lot of children's books. Why shouldn't I read them all to her kids? I'll read them all to my kids if I ever have kids. Hell, if my brother has kids, I'll read them to his kids. Right? I like reading, and I think children should be exposed to books. So I'm going to make sure that they get exposed to books. And they should be exposed to the original book. They should be exposed to history, because that's what these books are. They are history. You can have that conversation. You can have a conversation with them when you discuss these books with them. If you read Peter Pan to a child and you have that comic description of the Native American tribes, right, do you just read that bit and just let it wash over you? No, you don't. You read that bit and you have fun, and you say, you talk to the child and you say, this is a fantasy, and this is not really what Native American tribes are like. This is just a silly fantasy. Like, this is also not really what pirates are like. Pirates aren't really, fun rapscallion people, fighting off crocodiles. They were actually, murderers, and they were criminals, and they were bad people. But this is just a fantasy story, and that's okay. And also, fairies aren't actually real. That's the kind of thing that we need to drill into children. You know, in the same way that the depiction of the Native Americans in Peter Pan is ridiculous and reductive, so is the depiction of pirates, and so is the depiction of fairies, and so is the depiction of crocodiles, and so is the depiction of everything, because it's a fantasy book. So, it's fine. We don't need to change these things. What I will say is Philip Pullman, who I have this book here, which is another Folio Society book. I do have his Dark Materials, but it's much heavier than this, so I decided to get the Book of Dust off the shelf instead. By the way, I'm not sponsored by Folio Society, but I fucking should be, because I've got a lot of their books and I like to show them off. I'm going to be doing some more deep dive reviews of some of their books, the same way I did with The Neverending Story. If Folio would like for me to review more of their books and would like to sponsor me, I would happily accept a sponsorship, because that would mean potentially free Folio books, and these are expensive as hell. So, let's face it, if I was sponsored by Folio, would it change my content in the slightest? Would it? Bollocks. I clearly love these books, don't I? Obviously. So, yeah. This is a fantastic book, by the way. This is lovely. The quality of these books. I won't flick through it. I'll show this off in its separate review. But, Philip Pullman, the reason I've got this down is Philip Pullman wrote Book of Dust. He also wrote his Dark Materials, which is what Book of Dust is a sequel to. And he went on record as saying that the changes to Roald Dahl's texts are not very important. You know, he was asked, how it affects literature, and he kind of brushed it off and kind of avoided answering the question. Instead, he just wanted to push it to one side and suggest that actually Roald Dahl is just being held up by this system that is going to push his books. This a corporate system that pushes his books ahead of other authors, and that we shouldn't change his books. We shouldn't be updating his books. We should just leave him to go out of print and push other better authors. And then he lists a bunch of authors, all of which are nowhere near as good as Roald Dahl. The thing is, the way he said it, the way that he was approaching this, it's very clear that he just doesn't like Roald Dahl and doesn't care that this is happening. And given how his books are very critical of religion, how there were schools actively banning his books, how much his Dark Materials was a victim of censorship at the beginning, I find it really quite pathetic that Philip Pullman would behave in this way, that he wouldn't stand with the literary community and defend Roald Dahl's texts from what is a clear butchering. Because this could happen to his. I'm going to say right now, his Dark Materials has a very clear and obvious failing, and that is that all of the children in his series, in his Dark Materials, have these animal spirit companions. They are a core part of the fantasy world of his Dark Materials. They are animal-like spirits that are connected through this ethereal connection. Now, if you were to describe this in any other thing, like spirit animal would be a fine way of describing it. Familiar is probably the most accurate description. Like, this is your familiar. Wizards and other mages being able to summon an animal that is a reflection of your soul, that's a familiar or a spirit animal. What does Philip Pullman call it? He calls it a demon. Lyra's is basically a ferret. It's not a demon. It's not anything like a demon. Why does he call it a demon? He calls it a demon because Philip Pullman is an atheist, and he was writing the Anti-Narnia series, and he wanted to use the word demon because it would annoy Christians. That is my honest opinion as to why he used the word demon, and I hate that he used the word demon. I think it's pathetic and puerile, and frankly, if I was writing the books, I would have immediately replaced every copy of the word demon with the word familiar, because it's not a demon. It's not a demon, is it, Philip? Why did you use the word demon? Were you just being that pathetic? Were you just being provocative in order to annoy religious people. Because I'm provocative to annoy religious people. You only need to go on my Quora page, and you'll see that I respond to theistic questions all the time with, well, maybe you're just a bit delusional. You know, things like that. You know, your magical sky daddy isn't real. You know, I say things like that all the time because I am an obnoxious atheist, and I like to, you know, poke and prod the theists all the time. But the difference is, when I say it, I'm saying it on a bit of social media that doesn't really matter. You are saying it on a book that you were publishing to the world that you intended to sell as a major children's book. And you were doing this in a way that you knew was going to annoy people. Like, you were doing that just to be provocative. Now, should people have the right to take his dark materials and rewrite them to remove all references to the word demon because it offends Christians? Because I guarantee it offends Christians. I fucking guarantee it offends Christians. Hell, should we remove all atheist themes from it? Because I guarantee those offend the Christians. I know it does because the book was banned in multiple schools. Should we do that? Because these books have all been edited because it offends the woke bullshitters. Right. We're not allowed to have any references to gender. We can't have any references to colour. Someone's coat was black and the word black was removed because we can't have any reference to colour, even if it's not in a racial context. Right. There was a worm that was pink, and it was renamed. It was changed to the worm now being smooth because you can't reference colours anymore. Like, seriously. The number of things that were changed in this, the bit in The Witches about not being allowed to rip off a woman's wig has been changed to be this sanctimonious, well, women can wear wigs for a variety of different reasons and that's all okay. It sounds like the most pathetic, pandering, woke discussion points ever, and it ruins all of the text. It ruins all of Roald Dahl's prose. It takes the whimsy out of his prose. Shall we take the whimsy out of your prose, shall we, Philip? Shall we do that? Shall we take yours and shall we ruin it? Shall we take all the imagery out because it might offend a Christian? Is that okay to do? No, it's not. No, it's not. Even I'm offended by some of the word choice you use because I find it puerile and a bit sad. And I consider his Dark Materials to be one of the best children's books that you can read. If I was going to give it to my children, I'd say he calls it demons, but it's really just like a spirit animal or a familiar. He calls it, in this world they're called demons, but they're not demons like in religious texts. I would explain that to my kid because I'd feel the need to explain it because Philip Pullman has made me have to do that because he needed to use a word just to prove a fucking point. That's how pathetic Philip Pullman can be at times. Now, maybe there's a reason behind using that word. Maybe his purpose behind using that word was to demystify it, was to take it away from religious groups to say, you know what, that word, it means various different things in various different cultures, and Christians have taken it and they've made it into this evil thing that only exists within Christianity, and before Christianity it may have meant different things in different fairy tales, and I'm recapturing that word. Maybe that was his intention, and if that was the case, fine. I don't care. I still think it was badly chosen, but that's not the point. I still don't have the right to change it, because it's not my book. The fact that it bothers me doesn't matter. It's his prose, so it stays. The criticism is fine, but the criticism only works because the prose remains intact. You're allowed to criticise any prose you like, but the prose remain intact. So, that's my take on the subject. I am going to keep both Philip Pullman's and Roald Dahl's books because I think they're both fantastic libraries of books. and I want to have them available for my children or for my sister's children or for whatever children that I end up being able to read them to. And I'd also like to be able to read them myself, and I'd like to go back to them, and I'd like to reminisce, because they're fantastic books. That's why I want them. I do not ever want censorship, and I don't care whether they're children's books, whether they're classics, whether they're modern books. If you censor one book, you'll censor anything. We can't allow this to happen. For that reason as well, I will also say, and I've tweeted this to Puffin, I have my nice collectible books here. I also have my paperbacks. I also have ebooks of the entire library of Roald Dahl, which I have put online, and I'm going to leave online, and I'm going to make publicly available through torrents to anyone who wants them. And they're going to remain there forever, because fuck you, I am going to make sure literary preservation remains. Roald Dahl's dead, he doesn't care. Your estate does not have any right to it because you'll butcher his works, which means you don't respect his copyright, which means you don't get to profit from it. I don't care what the law says. I don't care how the system is supposed to work. You are supposed to preserve and you are supposed to protect his copyrights. You are supposed to take his property and you're supposed to make sure that it continues on, and you are failing at your job, so I'm going to do it for you. You are bad custodians of the Roald Dahl license, so you no longer have it. I have it. Screw you. If you don't like it, fucking sue me. I don't have anything. I'm a disabled man with no income. You can't sue me for anything. I'm fucking broke. And with that, I'll see you later. Bye.